If you talk to people today, including police officers, they think that policing in London started when Robert Peel founded the Metropolitan Police in 1829. What we have forgotten is that the original Peelers followed in the footsteps of an older body of men, a small waterborne unit created 30 years before that continued to protect London and the River Thames today.
At the end of the 18th century, London was very different to the city of modern times.
Georgian London was a shadow of the London that we know today. Less than 1 million people. It literally stopped at the south bank of the Thames, where Kent, Surrey and Middlesex began. But it was a port of great global significance, and so it was a very diverse and cosmopolitan place, which embraced both the richest and the poorest members of British society.
The Port of London, situated on the Thames, was one of the busiest ports in the world, with districts like Wapping and Shadwell being home to the many that made their living through work on the river. At any one time, thousands of ships bringing trade from all over the world populated the Thames.
The river was known as a forest of masts, said you could walk across the river on the decks of all the ships. There was never less than 1,000 ships within the port.
This commerce provided both raw goods and money, rapidly expanding the British economy and leading to the Industrial Revolution. The tax on imports also provided a major source of revenue for public finances. No trade was more important than that with the West Indies, accounting for 25% of all retained imports into London, including highly prized goods produced through slave labour on plantations, such as ginger, rum, and above all else, sugar.
I think one of the glaring gaps in British consciousness of our own history is that period in which the West Indies was really an incredible motive force. Profit from sugar essentially helped us make the Industrial Revolution happen. Almost everybody who was immensely rich in the 17th and the 18th century in this country made their money in the Caribbean.
The West India Committee was comprised of West Indian planters and sugar merchants who were based in London. Although their politics differed, they got together to combat the consequences of American independence. They were important as a group because they oversaw a significant driver of the British economy. The West India Committee's UNESCO-inscribed collection contains a Bank of England chequebook that shows that sugar was so valuable at the time that it was used as security for loans that today would be worth millions.
But with commerce came crime. In the 1790s, West Indian traders were losing an average of £232,000 a year, the equivalent of £27 million today.
The River Thames most certainly had a reputation for criminality. People would be employed there, up to 35,000 lumpers to unload ships and bring the cargoes ashore, and these people would be often unpaid. They would earn their living and feed their families by stealing.
In 1796, Patrick Colquhoun, a Scottish magistrate working in London, produced a report outlining the scale of crime on the river, and he had a radical plan to combat it. He proposed a system of policing that prevented crime rather than merely reacting to it, and identified different types of criminals on the river that a police force could deter.
The River Thames was plagued by highly organised crime, which used an incredible array of ingenious methods. Light horsemen used the cover of night to steal cargo in camouflage bags, whilst heavy horsemen hid sugar under their hats and in specially modified trouser pockets that reached their ankles. The most creative were the rat catchers, some deliberately releasing rats on ships in order to give them excuses to go on board.
It was clear to the West India Committee that something had to be done. They joined forces with Colquhoun, also enlisting the help of a merchant and Justice of the Peace, John Harriot. With government approval in July 1798, the West India Merchants and Planters Marine Police Office opened at 259 Wapping New Stairs. 50 officers were stationed there to patrol the ships and quayside, day and night.
The Thames Marine Police was effective right from the outset. In that first year of operation, it's estimated by Colquhoun that they would have saved the West India merchants about £100,000. They saved the government about £50,000 in taxes and revenue. The government and the merchants were extremely happy, but the people who'd lost their perks of the job were extremely unhappy with them.
After just 3 months, a group of river workers started a riot outside the office after they were fined for stealing coal. It resulted in the first death of a Marine Police officer, Gabriel Franks. Despite the riot, the effectiveness of the River Police was undeniable, and in 1800 the government transformed the force into a public body to protect all shipping on the Thames. In 1811, a brutal series of murders sent shockwaves through the country. They occurred half a mile away from the river in Wapping, on a road notorious for rampant crime and vice, the Ratcliffe Highway, reputedly the most dangerous street in the world.
It should be remembered that the Ratcliffe Highway murders didn't actually occur within the jurisdiction of the Marine Police, but they had the first officer on scene. Marine Police had to be redirected from their riverborne duties to patrol the streets to allay public fears, and it demonstrated and emphasised the need for proper land-borne policing.
The need for a preventative force to tackle crime on the land, not just the river, eventually resulted in the creation of the Metropolitan Police in 1829.
When Sir Robert Peel put his force on the streets in 1829, he was most definite that the force should be there to protect and not to oppress the people of London. These thoughts almost echo exactly the thoughts of Patrick Colquhoun all those years before.
Much like the Thames River Police, Metropolitan Police officers were drawn from the local community they served, and perhaps surprising to us now, this reflected London's increasingly diverse population then. One such example is Robert Branford, who joined in 1838.
The Branford story, which came as a surprise to me, reminds us that there were people of colour here a long way back. Branford is described as the only half-caste superintendent, which implies that there were a lot of other, let's use the word, half-caste, mixed-race people within the police. And it's not particularly remarked on. These guys were regarded as part of the natural picture of the city. And I think that is rather surprising.
The Thames River Police would continue as a separate force from the Metropolitan Police for 10 years before they merged in 1839. Today, they're known as the Met's Marine Policing Unit, and 219 years after their foundation, they continue to patrol the river from the very same station in Wapping.
The Marine Policing Unit has been on this very spot since 1798, and we've been doing 24/7 frontline policing since that date. London has changed over those 219 years. The policing principle is exactly the same. In Colquhoun's treatise, he makes it very clear that we can only police with efficiently with the consent of the public. That is no different today. Where we are right here, right now, is the spiritual home of modern day policing. Every police force across the UK can trace their roots back to Wapping.
Many people forget the important contributions that the West Indies have made to Britain and the world. Their idea of preventive policing is now widespread. Many forces from the Caribbean to Hong Kong, from Canada to the United States. They've either been founded on the model of the Metropolitan Police or at least inspired by their ideals, and therefore they too are ultimately descended from the original Marine Police Force founded in 1798.